A knowledge-based society depends on clear minds, clear thinking, clear thoughts. You cannot disintegrate the mind from the body. If you have a situation where people are working using their brain rather than feet, their hands, as in industrial society, in previous work experiences, caveman experience, then we have to deal with the most unknown organ within our body. And this is why we have a very big difficulty in relating to our the way in which we react with our body, with our mind, and the mind reacts with our body, because there is, as we know, a two-way relationship: mind, body, body, mind. In a sense, in intricate manner, we don't get tired today because we have done a day of strenuous work in the field, rearing potatoes and whatever. We have a stressful day, driving to work, meeting deadlines, meeting targets, thinking processes, lack of thinking time, deadlines. So why am I not surprised? I am not surprised because of the way things have evolved. The second point and the second issue is the two-way relationship. Mental well-being affects work performance. Work affects mental well-being. So there has to be a harmony between the mind and the work. And I think this is calling us for channeling our attentions to this very important dynamic. And thank you for bringing this up, because the issue is not, and please note, we're not talking of mental disorder or mental illness. We're talking of mental well-being, being okay with yourself, being okay with the way in which you are working, being okay with the way in which you are performing. The issue is not whether this is a mental condition or not. This is a way in which your mindset, your whole self is fitting well or worse within the environment that you're working with or working in. So this, to people working in HR particularly, must be a very important alarm bell. People are saying we have experienced mental well-being issues at work. People do not make a difference whether it is the workplace itself making their personal life worse, making their individual life worse, and people are human beings. They have a personal life which is maybe stressing them, they have a work life which may be stressing them, one affecting the other, and HR must realize that we are in the middle of this conundrum, trying to find our way to better help people.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Kakila. Lawrence, I'm seeing that you're nodding a lot to this. What are your comments?
I fully agree with what Dr. Kakila is saying, because at the end of the day, the 63% claiming to have mental health problems at work is not surprising at all. If you look at the way work is organized generally in Malta, there is clearly, we're clearly developing and creating more what are expected to be high performance jobs, even within a factory environment, which has to meet certain production targets in order to maintain a cost base which is competitive for Malta, be it in an office environment where you have issues related to regulation coming into, for example, I can think of examples where companies that have run actually engagement surveys, employing climate surveys, and it did emerge that the increased regulatory element in some businesses, in some type of sectors like financial services, has contributed to increasing stress and anxiety at work because of the fear of making mistakes and elements like that. And round. Then obviously we need to appreciate that the survey was conducted earlier this year, so it was still the feeling of the lockdown or the restrictions were still around, and this obviously also must have contributed. The issue is it actually the work itself that is contributing to the 63%? Is it colleagues? Is it the way work is organized? Is it the physical environment? That obviously needs to be studied further. But the 63% is no surprise whatsoever.
And thank you for this comment. And at the end of the day, of course, for perhaps employers and HR professionals who are new to this employer well-being at work, why should employers care about the mental health of their employees?
You're asking me?
Well, I think we both can chip in, Lawrence, on this one. Why is a very important question which needs to be asked daily, because, as Lawrence said, it's going to make or break or make a difference between the performer, industry, office, business, and the non-performer. We have research which shows that businesses that invest in mental well-being of staff perform 2 to 2.5 better than equivalent businesses that do not. And this is researched, very well researched. One can give you papers and references. You can find them all over the place. That is the reason why, the fundamental reason is the better performance of your business. Because when you are adopting a holistic approach to the person, and I dare say the person in its entirety, but Lawrence, I'd like to take you on one, which is the 3-tier approach that I always use in these circumstances. There's the individual at the shop floor, at the office floor. There is the supervisory element, and there's the managerial element. And all three must interplay in this. I mean, it's the shop floor and the employees, the individual and the employees amongst themselves, within an office environment, within a factory environment, within whatever environment. The supervisory staff who are supposed to be looking at what is happening across the board within sections, and who have those persons at HR level, the people we are addressing today, who should be looking at the overall situation. But looking at the overall situation is not useful if you don't drill down and see what's happening at those 3 levels.
No, to complement to what Dr. Kakia is saying, let's face it, any HR professional, any CEO, any board of directors should not just be worried or concerned about performance, about results, but a leadership role means also being concerned about relationships. And we need to keep this balance between relationships and results. And unless companies, employers look after the mental wellness and general employee wellness of their employees, relationships are bound to suffer. And if relationships suffer, then results will also suffer. So the reason why we need to be focusing on mental wellness and employee wellness is precisely this, to maintain this healthy balance between relationships and results. And yes, I do concur with what Dr. Kahia said, who, it is not the job just at one level, but it is across all levels and across all departments. So it is a horizontal issue, plus being a vertical issue, and it needs to be addressed across the board.
Okay, thank you. And in the meantime, we've also been asked a question whether this percentage is across all type of businesses. The answer is yes. The research was done across all businesses. we will be sharing the report as well. And in the report, you'll also have the industries which were involved within this research. Okay, and of course, I'd like to share another result, and basically here we're seeing that 67% of the respondents basically have never taken time off from work as a result of poor mental wellness. And on top of that, 82% of these said that they did not see the need to do so. Joanne, do you think employers and organizations are doing enough for employees to feel comfortable taking time off simply to take care of their mental well-being?
Okay, I think that it is more about creating a support network. So rather than employers doing enough for people in their organization to feel comfortable taking time off, it is also about creating an environment that ideally leads to reducing this need to take place. First and foremost, we need to see why this is happening in the first place. Because if we're mentioning that we have mental health days, right? And some people might feel the need that they need to take them. However, we need to see what is leading people to feel that they actually need these days off. So we need to deal with the issues. And how do we do this? Maybe it's not as straightforward as just giving them new benefits, and new perks, but it's actually, as Dr. Kaki and Lawrence mentioned before, creating an environment that actually induces communication and actually expressing how people are feeling. And if people are feeling burnt out or people are feeling that they have a lot of work, that they actually feel okay to say it and communicate it, because it's a two-way thing. And employees need to feel also supported that they're actually going to be heard. So I think it's more about creating that environment and forum to talk about mental health, and also a support system that facilitates this.
And do you have any tips of how to create such environment? Of course, it's, as you correctly said, it's easier said than done, and you cannot create this environment within a week or so. It of course takes time.
Yes.
Any suggestions for our participants?
I think it would be ingrained also in the way people interact within a company. So there is an element of communication, how people express themselves, how that communication is then received. So if an employee goes to their supervisor and says, I'm not coping with my workload, how is that then tackled? How is that investigated? How is that actually dealt with? Obviously, we need to be very, very fair and very open about this and have an open dialogue. So I think that is one of the most important elements. And then there is also the point that Dr. Kakia mentioned earlier, that we treat people as humans. We treat people holistically. So we need to keep in mind that, as we were saying before, people have work stresses, people have home stresses, and they're going to interlink. So we need also to see if people are going through what we say trait or state. Is it something ingrained in the person? What a person is actually characteristically going through, or is it a state? Is a person going through a difficult period of time? And we can tackle that accordingly. So I think obviously it needs to be taken case by case for the individual employees, but then we also need to take it at a higher level, at a strategic level. What are we doing to actually instill a culture of communication, a culture of openness, that people feel okay to actually express their difficulties, and also, on the other hand, express what's going on in the good times as well. There's an element of communication.
Exactly, because of course, whilst you're explaining this, we are receiving some other questions. How should I encourage the employees to take days off? And when you get to the operational level, it's there where it gets difficult. In fact, what one of the participants just told us that they do encourage their employees, but they do not take their time off. And I think, as Joanne explained, it's communication. Dr. Kakia, what are your views on this?
Well, there are several things that I need to react here to, and maybe some suggestions, just practical suggestions. My background is, for those who don't know me, 35 years managing the public health service in this country. So I think I've seen enough situations where people break down under the pressure of offering a health service. So now that I'm dealing with the mental health component in my regular life is a cherry on the cake. But from experience, what I would like to share with our HR people is, first of all, perception at shop floor level. How does the ethos of the company appear at shop floor level? Do we walk the talk? Do we actually at shop floor level practice what we preach? Do we perceive people taking leave as something good or something less good? Do we try and condition people who happen to take leave on, inverted commas, difficult times or difficult days? You will never know what a person is passing through. So I think giving trust to people is important. Then I listen to managers say, I never took a day off in a year. That is not good. That is not good. The example in Maltese we say "Leżempju jkaxkar." If the perception down there within an environment, a work environment, is that taking days off, taking leave, going and enjoying yourself is shied upon because you are not giving your full to the company, then I think you're spelling trouble and big trouble. So perception. Number two is self-care. One has to instill and help people instill in themselves self-care. Not easy. Not easy. You cannot give what you don't have. If someone is drained of energy, they cannot give you their day's work. So I think the issue of supporting initiatives like, promoting things in people's personal life, like hobbies or wellness days within companies, supported initiatives like, for example, paying for gym sessions for your staff, paying for psychological support services for your staff is one issue which is coming in very, very strongly. Training HR people within companies to be more au fait with psychological support and people with psychological backgrounds, helping people in HR to be able to deal with these issues. Thirdly, probably most importantly, solidarity when trouble comes. We do know what triggers mental disorder. Mental disorder is triggered mainly by life events. So someone who loses a partner, someone who has a marriage difficulty, someone who has a serious illness in the family, who is seriously ill himself, those are all flags for people crushing down under pressure. And at HR, we have to be sensitive because these issues do come to it on the desk of HR managers. And if you are not sensitive to the fact that someone has lost his partner, someone has lost his son, someone's son has got leukemia, someone's has a difficult relationship at home, all of this is going to impact the person. So it's a multitude of issues: perception, self-care and supporting that perception, and solidarity when pick comes to shove, because those are the elements which at the end of the day are going to improve a performance here. Because once we have 63% who say they have mental health difficulties, you have the opposite percentage who are taking time off to be able to deal with that stress. So we have here a completely dissonant situation, which has to be a room for reflection. And the worst thing is the people who said no, 82% of those 67, is a situation where they don't see the need to take time off, reflect, relax, do good things in life, do different things in life, because that's going to improve their work performance and their outputs. We're at the end of the day, we should be not interested in performance, we should be outcomes. What is the final result that you're getting from what you get? Lawrence?
Yeah. This data, I draw two conclusions, or rather, in between the lines, I see two elements. The first is the fact that 82% of those that answered no do not see the need, no to taking time off work, do not see the need for it, implies still that there is an issue of awareness. I think there is still an educational process that employers and employees need to go through, that mental health issues are important issues to be addressed. Clearly, they may not be sourced because, as Dr. Kakia said, sometimes the causes are life issues, a marriage breakdown, or even moving house sometimes, which is a positive behavior, so to speak, a positive action.
The birth of a son, the birth of a daughter,
the birth of a son, the birth of a child. Yeah. So they could all be positive things as well, but still there could be life issues, and I think therefore we need to increase awareness, and there is an educational process. The other thing which worries me greatly is if there is the attitude, I don't know, think of these actors, these big macho actors, a Bruce Willis type of thing, or a Sylvester Stallone type of thing. I call it the Sylvester Stallone syndrome. What do I mean by that? That it is as if at work there is the expectation, and there is the expectation, even I speak to chief officers, even people in senior management feel that they are made to feel like this by their own CEOs. Really, it's not just people down the line that feel this, but even people up the line, they are made to feel as if there's something wrong with you if you've got an issue of stress, of anxiety, of wellness, so you keep quiet because you don't want to show yourself to be a weak person. And that obviously
that you're not coping, Lawrence,
or that you're not coping with work. You're expected to, make time for whatever it is. And if needs be, give up your gym, and then you give up your meals, and finally give up your family. But work comes first. Now, if there is this culture, and this is where I think behavior and culture comes in, companies, HR departments, employers need to be consistent in their approach. It's not enough to do an employee wellness week or to do an employee wellness seminar, but I think it also needs to emerge on the way we deal with day-to-day issues. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're getting a lot of questions.
Carry on.
Where related to this, and I think I'm going to make a point because you're answering the question very perfectly, because a lot of the participants are asking, what if I have an environment where I support a system for mental well-being, however, the employees are shying back and not participating within these perks, or call them what you want. And the question remains there, what shall I do if I'm doing my best, but the employees are not participating?
Well, that's a clear indication that the employees are not believing what is being done. They're not believing in the employer. It's as simple as that.
The perception issue which I was talking about.
It's a perception,
The perception is that this is a facciata, this is a facade behind which the company is trying to hide itself. And there are more serious issues down there which need to be addressed.
Yeah. So if that's happening clearly, I think we need to do a lot more before in terms of the way we treat employees, the way we treat issues, etc. because there is a clear lack of trust.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't agree with this because my experience, and I've been quite a while in the software industry, is that you have a percentage of people who do look for help. They discuss with you and they move forward and improve. But there is a percentage which whatever you do, whatever discussion you do, even just giving them information to look for professional help, they refuse categorically. That's the biggest problem that I see with this issue. When a person refuses anything.
Paul, you are actually confirming something which we did as an office way back in 2014, which was a health literacy survey, and we moved also to look at mental health literacy. And we found in that survey, which is now a bit dated, in 2014, that 44% of the adults in this country have a difficulty in looking for help regarding things like stress and anxiety management. So what you are telling me, Paul, is an issue which is ingrained in people within society as not being able to come to terms with themselves.
Yes.
Which is a literacy issue, which needs to be addressed by understanding what is literacy and going through the motions of literacy, which is a four-tier process, understanding the issue, making decisions about it, and then implementing those decisions. And some people have not even got the first step in that process, which you are rightly pointing out, understanding that they have a problem.
Fully agree.
So, Paul, I mean, we're not disagreeing with what with your experience. We're just saying that you need to see and look at this in the perspective of the individual's personal mental health and general health literacy. And the best way to gauge that is when you ask the person about self-esteem. And you will find most often that those people who react in that manner are people who have the lowest personal self-esteem.
100%, I fully agree with you. And it's not a matter of how good they are. I found people who are extremely good, but their self-esteem is extremely low.
They could be senior managers if they have a self-esteem which is beneath the level of their feet. They will never make it to have a proper life balance in life. So you need that. This is why I talk to HR people and ask you one question, which is, if you have one question to ask people who are behaving in the way Paul is talking about, is try and look for their self-esteem, and you will find that the problem is low self-esteem. I will not say always, but in most situations.
And also, I think the level of self-awareness that people have, how much they know themselves and how to cope with certain situations. Also linked to what Lawrence was saying, the macho syndrome. You know, then I will never give up, and I will never admit that I have an issue that I cannot cope.
Correct, Joanne. And I repeat something which I often say: if you don't have any petrol in your tank, you cannot give petrol to other people.
Very interesting. Yes, true.
I have a further comment, if you don't mind, on this element of taking time off. I think there is also an element ingrained within our culture, our Maltese culture in general, that for us to take a day off, we need to fill it in to the brim with things we need to do, with errands, with other, you know, we need to have a scope to take a day off. In general, Maltese people and even people around me and people I discuss this with tell me that people do not take time off to rest. Sometimes they find it very difficult unless they are going abroad or unless they are going for a weekend break. But in general, if they just take a day off during the week, this to run errands. So I think it's also how we look at our time off and how we spend it. And this will contribute to this element of taking time off for our mental wellness. And we should also encourage people to take days off to rest, not when they're burnt out, but encourage them to space them out during the year so that it does not lead to burnout in the first place.
It's like we live in a world where we need to keep ourselves busy all the time, because if not, it's like we're doing something wrong.
Can I just take you to the months of April of last year, when people found themselves at home, started doing things they never did before, but they soon got fed up of doing those things. And soon that feeling of how nice it is to be at home started dawning on people that, hey, there's something missing here. There's something missing here. Let us remember those experiences, those life experiences, which are not too far away. I mean, some of us had too much on their plate in those months to be able to even think about cooking or doing other things. But we had this situation at national level, at individual level, and I do support what Joanne has just said about taking days off to relax, to go to the beach, to do the things that you really like to do in life, and not the odd errands that need to be done because I cannot do them otherwise.
Agreed. True.
That's another work-life balance issue. I mean, why should people be taking days off to be able to run errands? I mean, there's another point of reflection that needs to be made there, but I think that's the scope of another webinar.
I think so. In fact, here I'm going to introduce another finding where we found basically that when respondents were asked what causes them to feel stressed, pressure and heavy workload basically were on top. 47% of the respondents often find their job stressful. Okay, we know that by now. And 44% claim that they experience pressure, and 34% claim that this is due to heavy workload. So heavy workload and pressure were on top. Dr. Kakia, do you agree that pressure and heavy workload can be a cause of stress?
Yes, but this leads you immediately to ask the question, why? Because there is no reaction which is not the result of action of what is happening. Now, the fact that around 50% of respondents found their job stressful and that they experience pressure, and a third said this is due to heavy workload, is telling us a lot of things about the way in which work is organized. Let us not misjudge the situation. The fact that the job is stressful to a level is not, I'm not saying stress is bad, but stress, working under stress makes you think better, think clearer, because physiologically we are made to think better when we are slightly under stress. What starts to happen is when that stress does not vent, continuous, goes on and on and on and on and on and on, day after day, day after day, every day, and there is no relief of that stress on a regular basis. Should we always be running after deadlines? Are there times and days when we can have a more relaxed approach at work? So that's the first point. The second point is pressure. Pressure of what? Of performing, of results, of outcomes, of reasonable outcomes or unreasonable outcomes. We will talk a bit later about signs and symptoms of what is happening and what is causing this. Heavy workload may mean the worker is telling you the workload is not distributed evenly. We tend to trust more the people who work more, and maybe there would be issues there on the shop floor that we're being unfair in the way in which work is distributed. So one has to be very, very careful in answering and analyzing the mental health at work effect by being a bit more proactive in terms of the analysis of the flow, the work processes on a daily basis of the individual parts of the business, and the courage to identify stressors, address them, and deal with them at HR level. at organizational level, at individual level, at environmental level. It could be the light, it could be the sound, it could be because you changed brake systems, it could be because you changed something in the situation which has unbalanced the processes. So basically, I mean, we've seen this over and time again. I mean, people failing to see through changes from in a particular work process from A to Z, not realizing that touching X will have an impact on A at the very beginning of the process. So I'm trying to be simplistic in this. It's not easy. It's not as if, you know, I mean, white or black. There are plenty of shades of gray here, but one needs to be very specific when one gets these results. Is the stress on a daily, regular basis unbearable? Is the pressure daily, regular, unbearable? And when people are telling us there is a heavy workload, are they saying that other people have it nice and easy on the same shop floor? These are the thoughts that come to mind.
Lawrence, perhaps you could share your thoughts on this.
I think we need to understand that we feel stressed or we feel a heavy workload or we experience pressure when we feel we cannot cope, okay? I don't think it's necessarily a question of the actual volume of work. There are days when we can cope with a large amount of volume of work, but because of the mood, for one reason or another, we can take it, we can take that heavy in terms of volume, in terms of heavy workload. And there are days when the minutest of things upsets us and we suddenly find it all very stressful. So this is where what Joanne said, there needs to be an element of self-awareness. We need to understand what tends to upset us, what tends to make us feel we can't cope, what sort of puts us into a bad mood, etc. Because there could be some issues related to ourselves, issues related to work, but there could be things which could be totally extraneous to us. I mean, let me just give a practical example. If I suffer from asthma, you know, springtime is one of the saddest times of the year for me, because obviously I need to cope with that. And the most small of things suddenly makes me all stressed out, may make me all, if I don't know what to do about it. So I think here we need to understand that it is not so much whether the volume is big or whether the deadlines are too tight, but it's also an element of how we cope with them. Obviously, we have different characters, different personalities. So those of us that are more risk takers will know maybe how to handle pressure and will postpone deadlines because they risk postponing deadlines, because in their mind, it's a risk we're taking. Those that are very maybe prudent in their approach, very organized in their approach, highly self-organized, which is an excellent thing to be. But on the other hand, sometimes that own self-organization, rigid self-organization, may actually cause us stress because of changes that happen during the day. So I think here we need to understand the link between the volume of work, pressure, and actually the ability to cope. And I think even here we need to understand that employers have a responsibility to ensure that their staff are trained adequately to do the job that they do. It is very easy to think of technical training, but then there is elements of qualities, elements of skills training, soft skills training, which we need to focus on as well. Let us not assume that because we know how to manage time, other people know how to manage time, or that our system of managing time is necessarily the best system for others, or what will work for others. So here, what employers can do is definitely an element of skills training. Something which I have also noticed in companies, and we have also been involved in, up to a certain extent as MISCO, is there are companies who, in addressing some of the issues, actually provide training on dealing with personal issues. Let me just give you one practical example that I have in my head. I have delivered training to companies on managing personal finances, because that could be in itself the source of it all, and then it reflects itself at work. Okay? Dr. Kaki and I have been through the process of buying a house for the family, etc., etc. Okay, we've been through that in our lives. I can't imagine. I don't know how a 22 or 23-year-old today manages to juggle all the requirements of personal finances and at the same time buy a house or buy an apartment, buy one's own residence, so to speak, whatever that residence is. So there are external issues which we need to keep in mind, which I'm sure are unbalancing us. They imbalance us. It could be traffic as well, mind you. They imbalance us, and because they imbalance us, then we feel we have a workload, which under other circumstances wouldn't feel it so heavy, even though the volume is the same.
You mentioned a very good point with reference to the training that you gave on personal finances. Now, I am an HR professional, and I note that some of the employees are not well. How can I know that someone is struggling on personal finances? How can I get to know? It's a very personal and sensitive subject. I'm not going to go on someone and ask them, are you struggling on personal finances? What is a suggestion on this?
No. But over here, we go back to relationships. The most fundamental of things, relationships. I mean, if I expect someone to come up to me and tell me, look, I've got personal financial problems, I think we're kidding ourselves. If I ask a question and I expect an honest answer, I'm also kidding myself. So HR professionals, management need to walk the job. It's as simple as that. It's how much, it's the extent to which I've built a relationship with someone to such an extent that they feel comfortable bringing up the issue. But I can't do that from day to night or from night to day. That needs to be built over the years. That's my behavior, my consistent behavior in being approachable. It's not enough to say, I have an open door policy. Are you behind the door, or are you never then behind the door at the end of the day? Okay? So in effect, build relationships. If you build relationships, then people tend to be
You were asking for examples before. Can I just give you one anecdote? I was superintendent of St. Luke's Hospital in the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s. Today, I do find myself sometimes walking the corridors in Mater Dei, and someone comes to me and says, "Super, kif inti kollox sew? Ara, hemmhekk għandna problema taf dak il-dipartiment." Relating to me 35 years later, as they used to relate to me on the shop floor 35 years ago when I was their boss.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And this is what Lawrence is talking about. This is when people trust you such a way that they give you what is happening in their own department, even though they know that you're far away from the system today and you can do nothing about it. This is where you need to be walking the talk. This is where, I mean, let me give you one tip about financial issues. Do you have employees, when you have overtime, that they fight for every hour of overtime that we can do? That's one tip.
Yeah.
And if I can add on to this and take it further, it is then what we do as leaders in companies with the information that we're given as well. So how do we deal with that information? And how do we take that forward? So that is where the trust then is built, because people can open up to you. There are some things that you can help them with, and some things you can only offer an ear, and a pat on the back. But sometimes that is enough. So it's the support system also that you build, because people sometimes just like to vent out and have an outlet. So it's also taking that a bit forward, a bit of a higher level. So how do we deal with that information? Are we able to do anything about the information that we're given? And if not, sometimes it's about also being honest and open. Like, listen, we're at the stage and there is this that we can do about it, or we cannot do anything for this point in time, but in the long term, we can also work on it. So yes, it's building on the relationship.
And Joanne, there is another thing which one has to be very careful for. It's the informal networks within your organization.
Yes.
What do people talk about in the canteen?
Yes. Exactly.
And that does not always filter to top management or to HR management.
Yes.
But those are the concerns that you need your radio to be switched on to. And when people trust you with what's going on in the informal network, and then you use that not to spy or punish people, but use that information to even ask yourself the questions: what am I doing wrong in this situation? What should I be doing to avoid what is happening? And the worst thing you can do is betraying that trust once. If you betray that trust once, you're finished. Sorry about this, but this is the one thing you must never do. Betray the trust of people who come forward with the courage to talk about something.
With the willingness to do something about it.
And the willingness to do something about it, because they believe that you can do something about it.
Exactly.
Because they've put their trust in you, you've betrayed their trust, and you're lost forever in that situation.
Yes.
Very, very interesting debates. However, of course, we would need to go on. Another finding over here was the question basically tackled which of the following do you think that poor mental wellness in the workplace affects performance? This is what the respondents who were employed people thought that these affect the mental wellness at the workplace, and trouble concentrating and being less patient with clients were on top this year. So please note that here are two results. The results in 2020, a research which we did last year, and we did the same research this year in 2021. So that is what we're looking at, that this year trouble concentrating and being less patient with clients, customers, or colleagues were on top. Joanne, it seems that poor mental well-being at work has its consequences, of course, on certain output. What are your experiences on this?
Okay, I think it is what we were also mentioning before with regard to focus. So if people are thinking about their troubles at home and their troubles with their work colleagues, maybe, they will not be able to focus as much on their job. And we also, on another note, we also need to keep in mind that we need to investigate what is causing this trouble or poor mental well-being, because if it is something, this poor mental well-being is being caused by something at work, then it is within, hopefully, our control, and we can do something to change it. And we also need to ask questions like, is the person actually happy doing the job? Is the person satisfied? Does the person have the skills necessary, as Lawrence was mentioning before? Because these triggers can lead to loss of focus because they feel that they're not doing a good job and they're not performing. And it's a vicious circle that then affects performance.
Yes, true. And in fact, this of course replies to us the importance of tackling the mental well-being at work, because the respondents themselves did say that if they suffer mental well-being, they will have the trouble concentrating. And of course, then that will reflect in the productivity of their work. And as you explained, it's a vicious cycle. Lawrence, do you have any recommendations to employers and HR professionals here?
let's appreciate that the trends are haven't changed much from one year to the next. 42 to 40, 24 to 25, you know, they're not big. There aren't any significant issues. So these are, you know, these are the main issues: trouble concentrating, and less patience with clients, customers, and conflicts with colleagues. Obviously, these are things which are early warning signals. If HR professionals and management don't appreciate that there are conflicts between colleagues, then where is their head? Where are their eyes? Where are their ears? I believe that if we start to notice these are clear issues, that clear symptoms that there are some issues related to mental health at work. What I would do is, well, what I would suggest is, one is I'm going to make a statement which is easy. It is easy for me to say it, but obviously then delving deeper into it makes has its difficulties. But the point is, we need to create a workplace that is, I like to describe as being psychologically safe. Okay, a psychologically safe workplace where staff work happily, as in they are satisfied with the job they are doing. Not saying that work is always very positive, there will always be issues, but at least people feel self-fulfilled that they are doing the job that they are doing. And at the same time, they are learning. It's not just a question of people working, but it's also a question of people feeling that they are learning as part of the process of working. One thing which I have found very practical in discussing and advising people during courses is, I like to call them engaging in creative conversations. By creative conversations, I don't mean necessarily, or not I don't mean at all, discussing artworks like Picasso, Leonardo, and that sort of thing, okay? By engaging in creative conversations is by having informal discussions on, for example, how we can work better together, how we can make, we can have more satisfied customers, what skills we may wish to need to have or to refine. How can we make work less stressful? How can we communicate better? Because I am sure that staff always have their opinions and their suggestions to make. Now, obviously, one will have conflicting suggestions, so then decisions have to be taken. But I think if we are open and transparent about it, that we want to listen, and that we will act on it, well, it doesn't mean we're going to act on each and every one of them, but we are going to act on some of these ideas, and we start to act on them, then people start to see a change in attitude. And then obviously trust starts to be built. But the idea should be, as I said, the fundamental idea is, how can we create, or how can we develop a psychologically safe work environment?
Can I just comment about one piece of data which on that chart has not been talked about? Around 10% feel that there is no link between mental wellness and workplace performance. And these are, Paul, Ghaffar, these are your difficult ones. These are the people who feel that they're impermeable. And they are the more difficult ones, probably, that you need to realize that if this is a spectrum of all workplaces, you have 10% of your staff who do not believe that mental wellness and workplace performance have anything to do with each other. Obviously, we all disagree with this, but it's one issue that we need to be aware of.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward, this is another interesting finding, basically. Here we're looking at 89% of respondents agree that employers have a role to play in looking after the mental well-being of their employees. And 55% of respondents wouldn't know how to approach the topic of mental health or well-being if they were struggling at work. So these are the same respondents where we're looking at, okay, they agree that their employers are the ones to take care of their well-being at work, but at the same time, they don't know how to tackle this or approach this topic. Dr. Kakia, are there any signs which an employer and HR professionals can look for if someone might need support at work?
Well, the 55% who do not know how to approach the topic brings me back to mental health literacy. The issue of the ability to look for solutions. And this is where the awareness issue comes along. This is where the self-care issues come along. This is where the that we've talked about in previous slides about the situation. But I think that if respondents are looking towards employers in the issue of looking after mental well-being, employers and HR professionals should be looking for signs and symptoms. Now, signs and symptoms, coming from the medical field, obviously, I've always worked with signs and symptoms. But even here, we have signs and symptoms. Can I just give you two tips on this one? 3 maybe. People who regularly do not avail themselves of their vacation leave. Though you have to ask yourself why. Why do people forfeit vacation leave? Why do people do not take vacation leave? That is an easy one. Second one, do we have a situation where people are asking for transfers out of a particular department? You have a particular department within your business, or a particular section within your business where mobility is a matter of the day. That is a sign, a possible sign of stress within that department, within that situation. It could be the work organization, it could be the work processes, it could be individuals within that work process, it could be the manager, some of the staff, incidents which have happened, a conglomeration of ideas. It could be simply that you're asking too much, or there is an inequity in the way in which the work is divided within that department, and people do not feel comfortable, and once they go there, they want to move out. Third sign, sick leave. When you monitor sick leave by departments and by bits of your organization and notice that there is excessive sick leave, then that is another issue where, in my experience, is a telltale sign that all is not well. Most often, sick leave is resorted to in situations where people find themselves not coping with. It's not just an individual. When it's not just an individual, but a group of people within the same department availing themselves of sick leave. So these are 3 facets of a situation which can give you a bit more indications. And finally, all of you have the experience with social partners, trade unions, which are the departments which more often than not give you headaches when you come to discuss with unions. Those are pointers towards where mental well-being may be an issue that needs to be tackled. Maybe the organization of work itself needs to be tackled because it is causing undue pressure, undue stress, and trouble within the organization.
Very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Kakia. Basically, now we're moving on to the next and final part of the research. which is a bit of a shorter part, which is supporting the mental wellness at work. Of course, we've been discussing this throughout our discussions, but these are more were more tackled in the research. And here are some interesting findings that we found. And basically, here we're looking at mainly which initiatives were liked by the respondents. And here were healthy lifestyle initiatives, work-life balance, and stress reductions on the top of the list of the respondents. And on the other question, we asked whether the workplace actually provides any initiatives to improve the mental well-being of the employees. And some interesting findings were, so work-life balance was one of the top. And then another striking finding was that 32% included that none of these were provided at work. Of course, an employer, our question would be, again, how can an employer know whether they have positive well-being at work, to be able to actually know whether they should include certain initiatives or not? Lawrence, what do you think?
Okay, some thoughts, in fact, to answer your question. This 33% prefer healthy lifestyle initiatives. There is some other research which we did at MISCO about other things. But one of them was, if COVID were not an issue, I remember the question, if COVID were not an issue, what would you like to be doing in your free time? And apart from things like spending time with friends and family, the main conclusion was actually healthy lifestyle activities, typically like going to gym, going for walks, clearly this 33%, I think, is confirms this other research which I'm referring to. What can employers do in terms of healthy lifestyle, but also other things? Well, there are some employers who actually, again, provide not courses, but do workshops on actual wellness initiatives, like having a healthy diet, doing physical work. Physical training. And these are things, I think, which tend to help employees in order to cope with the element of stress which may exist in the company. In terms of flexible hours, because it was mentioned by 32%, what initiatives would you like and what employers provide? Increasingly, especially during COVID, between home working and other situations, obviously flexible hours became more implemented as a benefit. But let us appreciate that even with flexible hours, you need to provide your staff with training. Don't just assume that because you've given staff the possibility to have flexible hours, they know how to handle it. Okay? They know how to handle it. And you have really two types of training there. It's the people that avail themselves of it that need to be trained how to handle, how to work as efficiently, but working with flexible hours, but also the people that still work strictly to a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever it is, 8-hour day regime. Because all of a sudden, you have two people who were working in the same room. They could ask questions to each other whenever they wanted. All of a sudden, one of them was not there all the time. So it can be very frustrating to the person who is in the office and has a question to ask and needs an answer straight away, doesn't find the person, okay, send an email, but then the email leads to another email, because obviously people don't understand each other. Okay? So when it comes to flexible hours, the worst thing that we can do is just introduce them and not coach people how to tackle them. Both the people that adopt a flexible hour regime, as well as those employees that then still stick to a fixed time regime. The same applies for remote working. It can be very frustrating for people who are in the office, again, that they need to contact someone who is on remote working and flexible hours, where still, and so the people are not available to each other. So these are all things which I think they're very easy to have, very good to have, but not that easy to implement. They require thoughtfulness. So the crux of all this is an element of training in certain personal aspects, as I said. Before I mentioned the personal finances, but as I said, it could be healthy eating, it could be physical training, etc., but also training in how to manage these new work organization formulas. 32% said none of these. Doesn't surprise me, because I can imagine that there are 1/3 of workplaces where certain initiatives may not be possible, because you cannot, for example, have home working in a factory or in a hotel, just to give you an example. Okay, so there are things which I think need to be accepted, that certain things are not. But on the other hand, there is nothing to stop these workplaces to provide psychological support when required, etc.
And in fact, what you're saying, Lawrence, leads to the next slide, where basically here we're looking at respondents' preferences to of course certain initiatives to be implemented, and basically these are 85% would attend a workshop on how to achieve a positive work-life balance. Physical activity to reduce stress was mentioned, that's 52%. 85% would take part in an employee team building activity if it was offered at the workplace, and 52% would also talk to someone to reduce stress. Of course, these are presented in the report, which we'll be sharing, but again, these are the striking figures. Joanne, your experiences in these within organizations, what are your comments?
What's striking to me again here in the slide is the 42% who would talk to someone to reduce stress, because that links also to what we were saying before, the element of communication, openness, and trust. Offering near to someone to actually hear them out almost works with half of the people. So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. I think we also need to be aware of good signs of positive well-being at work. So sometimes it's generated also by the feel of the environment at work, and also having, you know, if you're in a positive work environment, you can see that they are relaxed and they're still productive. So the relaxed and productive environment there will give you the impression that it is a positive work environment, and also the values that the people have amongst each other. So how do they treat each other? Do they respect each other? Do colleagues actually trust each other? So these are elements that we also need to keep in mind as HR professionals and leaders in companies, to make sure that the positive work environment is present.
Interesting, very good, very good. Of course, that leads us to the end of this presentation. Any final comments from participants or from the speakers here, Dr. Kakia?
Can I just take you back to what Joanne was saying about the attributes of when an organization is working properly, when a company is doing its best? What are the elements that you need to put on your checklist to be able to understand, yes, we are doing fine, we need to improve this, that, and the other? What are the attributes? And to me, there are 5 things at the end of this which one needs to keep in mind. How focused are you on people within the organization? And the focus on people has to be top down. management, middle management, shop floor. The focus on people. And the focus on clients, because at the end of the day, if your focus on people is only limited within the environment of your business, but does not translate itself into a focus on the clients and the client needs, then you are a self-fulfilling organization which is not making the inroads it needs to make within the business sector that it's operating in. Joanne was talking about positive signs. I talked about what are the symptoms and signs of when things go wrong. When things go right, you notice that that unit, that section is always coming up with fresh ideas, with new ideas, with proposals to change, with a participative type of approach. They always want to do something different. That is where you are doing things right. That is the things that you need to achieve within your organization if you want things to be moving okay. Fourth point, innovation. The innovation comes from these people that you trust within the organization. They are the people who make you grow. They are the people who make you be different. So thinking about their mental well-being is also thinking about how innovative they can be towards your clients' needs and addressing them better. Because performance is only about always chasing the optimum, never being happy with what I'm doing today. But that requires a balanced environment, a balanced approach that gives you the thermometer of a properly functioning organization. And the properly functioning organization needs to have those elements that Lawrence and your study showed. It's the sleep, how much people sleep at night. It's how much good food, healthy exercise they do. It's how much they enjoy themselves. It's how much social one thing which COVID has shown us is social interaction. How important is social interaction at the workplace? And losing that for the flexibility and remote working is detrimental because people have a social element to them that needs to be fostered and increased. So yes, flexibility, yes, the right to disconnect, we have not talked about it. Yes, corporate social responsibility initiatives, doing things together in a different environment, all goes to build the team, all goes to build the approaches, but a focus for people leading innovation towards better service to clients. A focus on people, on the way in which people are in a holistic manner.
My concluding comment is one, I sincerely hope that this is the second wave we've done of the employee wellness survey. It is evident that awareness is increasing. Even the Chamber of Commerce now has a subcommittee which focuses on employee wellness. So my hope is that it is not a fad which eventually passes, because otherwise we will be hurting ourselves. The issue has been there for many years, if not forever. Unfortunately, it has been subdued or it has been kept hidden. And now that we are talking openly about it, it should not be seen as a stigma, the fact that people talk about such issues and that employees talk about such issues. I think the fact that people are now giving more attention to mental wellness and mental health and at work and employee wellness is, he wouldn't say it himself, but I can say it because we were at school together, is due to Dr. Kakia's insistence and efforts to bring this issue forward. And I think we all need to give him a big thank you for this, because at the end of the day, he has managed to bring into the open an issue which I think, as I said, the worst thing we can do is try to hide it, try to think it doesn't exist anymore, because it is something which is which we need to address, and we need to address consistently and continuously.
Thank you, Loris, for those words.
And with regards to my concluding remarks, first of all, I wish to add something to what Dr. Kakeo was saying with regard to the positive environment. One would also notice if there is a positive environment at work through simple things such as sense of humor and also smiles. This is a very, very physical way of seeing people enjoying their work in the workplace and enjoying each other's company and the teamwork, basically, and achieving something together. With regard to mental wellness and well-being at work, there surely has a lot still that which needs to be done. But I think that the fact that we're speaking about it and there is increased awareness is something positive. What I would invite HR professionals to do is to see what they are doing about the subject and how they are tackling it, so that what we implement is more higher level, strategic, dealing with our communication, dealing with the actual environment, dealing with the relationships, and not feeling that having only because it's okay, it's good as well, only healthy lunches at the workplace as being something that we're doing to increase mental well-being. I think it's more than that. And offering the support and offering this openness in the environment, I think is essential. That's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that everyone agrees that we have had a very interesting session. I think we all have a lot of tips to take home with us and to implement. Of course, moving forward, because I've been getting a lot of messages privately, we will be sharing the recorded session with you. We will be sharing also the report with you of these findings, and I'll thank you all for joining and of course for participating in this MISCO talk. We look forward to seeing you to the next one. Thank you very much. Have a good day.